Have you ever reacted to something in your adult life and immediately thought, why did I just do that? Maybe it was a sudden rush of anxiety, a fear of rejection, or an urge to pull away, even though nothing in the moment really explained it. These aren't just personality quirks, they're patterns. Patterns formed in the most formative years of your life. Our childhood isn't just a chapter in our life story. It's the foundation of everything that follows. It's where our core beliefs, fears, and emotional reflexes begin to take shape. And most of that shaping doesn't happen consciously. It happens quietly, invisibly, within the subconscious. The subconscious mind is powerful, far more powerful than we often give it credit for. While we go about our daily routines, thinking we're making conscious choices, the truth is, around 90 to 95% of our behavior is actually driven by the subconscious. This is according to neuroscientists like Dr. Bruce Lipton, who emphasize that the subconscious is like a massive database of stored programs, habits, beliefs, emotional patterns, many of which were imprinted before the age of 7. Now think about that for a moment. Before you even had the ability to logically reason or filter what was happening around you, your mind was already absorbing, recording, and interpreting everything. The tone of your caregivers' voices, how they responded to your cries, whether you felt safe when you were upset. These things taught your subconscious what to expect from the world and from yourself. If you were consistently comforted when you were in distress, your subconscious likely learned that emotions are safe and people can be trusted. But if you were ignored, shamed, or even punished for showing feelings, your subconscious may have recorded a very different message: that vulnerability is dangerous, that love is conditional, that it's safer to shut down. And the thing is, we don't remember most of this consciously. We might not recall specific moments, but the emotional blueprint is still there, quietly guiding our reactions in adulthood. It can show up in the way we love, in our fear of failure, in our ability or inability to speak up for ourselves. One of the most important things to understand about early childhood is this: it's a time of pure absorption. A child's brain is primarily in what's called the theta state, a brainwave frequency that is highly receptive, almost like a hypnotic trance. That's why kids believe what they're told without question. If a parent says, "You're so clumsy," or "Why can't you do anything right?" even once, the child doesn't analyze that statement. They absorb it. It becomes part of their inner narrative. And that narrative? It doesn't go away. It lingers beneath the surface. Later in life, you may find yourself avoiding certain opportunities, relationships, or challenges, not because you truly can't handle them, but because your subconscious still carries that voice. You're not good enough. You'll mess it up. Don't even try. This isn't about blaming parents. Most of them did the best they could with the tools and awareness they had. But understanding the power of those early years is about reclaiming our story. When we understand how the subconscious forms, we begin to see that many of the things we struggle with today aren't flaws. They're echoes. They're old strategies, coping mechanisms we developed to survive or feel loved in a specific environment. For example, maybe you became a perfectionist because as a child, your achievements were the only time you got attention. Or maybe you struggle with setting boundaries because growing up saying no wasn't an option. You had to be the peacemaker to keep the home calm. What once helped you cope might now be holding you back. And here's something truly empowering. The subconscious isn't fixed. It's programmable. Just as it absorbed beliefs and behaviors in childhood, it can unlearn and relearn new ones. But the first step is awareness, bringing these patterns into the light. In the next part, we'll dive deeper into the types of childhood experiences that shape us the most: attachment styles, emotional safety, and how trauma, even when subtle, embeds itself in the subconscious. But before we go, if this resonates with you. If you're beginning to connect the dots between your past and the patterns in your life today, consider subscribing. This journey is about healing, about making peace with your story, and learning how to consciously shape the life your subconscious has been quietly steering. And remember, there's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. You're just carrying echoes. And you can learn how to change the song. By now, you know that your subconscious mind isn't born with a script. It's written over time, line by line, starting in the earliest days of life. But what exactly is being written? What kinds of experiences leave the deepest marks? To truly understand how our childhood shapes our subconscious, we have to talk about one of the most important aspects of early development: emotional safety and attachment. Attachment is the first relationship a human ever forms, and it usually starts with a parent or primary caregiver. It's more than just feeding or changing diapers. It's about how that caregiver responds to your emotional needs. Do they comfort you when you're scared? Do they notice when you're upset? Do they welcome your joy, your tears, your questions? Or do they seem distracted, unavailable, or even frightening? These early emotional exchanges, small everyday moments, create the foundation for what psychologists call your attachment style. And your attachment style doesn't just determine how you relate to your parents. It shapes how you relate to everyone: friends, partners, co-workers, even yourself. If a child grows up with a consistent, attuned caregiver, someone who responds with warmth, patience, and presence, that child usually develops what's called a secure attachment. They learn subconsciously that the world is a safe place, that people can be trusted, that emotions can be expressed and held. These children typically grow up feeling confident, connected, and emotionally resilient. But when caregiving is unpredictable, neglectful, or intrusive, the child adapts in different ways that make sense in the moment, but often become burdens in adulthood. For instance, if a parent is loving one day and cold the next, a child might become anxious, constantly scanning for signs of rejection. This creates what's known as anxious attachment, a pattern where love feels uncertain and relationships come with fear. On the flip side, if a caregiver is consistently unresponsive or dismissive, the child might shut down emotionally. This can lead to avoidant attachment, where connection feels unsafe and vulnerability becomes something to avoid at all costs. There's also disorganized attachment, which can develop in environments where the caregiver is a source of both comfort and fear, such as in households marked by abuse, addiction, or emotional unpredictability. In this case, the child's subconscious internalizes deep confusion about safety and love, often carrying chaotic patterns into adulthood. But here's something important. Not all trauma looks like trauma. Many people hear the word and think only of extreme events, violence, abandonment, or obvious neglect. But trauma can be subtle. It can live in the things that didn't happen: the hug you needed but never received, the apology that never came, the feeling that you had to grow up too fast, or always be the strong one. These are known as little t traumas, chronic, less obvious emotional wounds that quietly shape our subconscious beliefs. For example, if you were constantly told to toughen up when you were sad, you may have learned to suppress your emotions, believing that feelings are a weakness. If you had to achieve or behave perfectly to earn praise, your subconscious may have equated worth with performance. Or if your parent was always stressed, sick, or emotionally unavailable, you may have learned to silence your needs just to avoid being a burden. And here's where it gets really powerful. Even if you don't consciously remember these moments, your body and subconscious do. They remember the tension in the room when voices rose. They remember the sting of being ignored, the look of disappointment, the feeling of being too much or not enough. These emotional imprints live on, not as clear memories, but as reactions defenses, and deeply embedded beliefs. Science backs this up. Research in developmental neuroscience and epigenetics shows us that chronic stress in early life doesn't just shape behavior. It can actually influence brain structure. The amygdala, the brain's fear center, becomes more reactive. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for decision-making and regulation, may become less active. Even the nervous system gets trained to anticipate threat. This is why some people feel constantly on edge, emotionally numb, or deeply untrusting, because their early environment programmed them to be on alert. It's not about blame. Most caregivers weren't trying to harm their children. In fact, many were carrying their own unhealed wounds, repeating patterns they never chose. But acknowledging how these early experiences shape us isn't about fault. It's about understanding. It's about giving yourself the compassion you might not have received and realizing that your struggles make sense. They're not signs of weakness. They're signs of adaptation. And once you recognize that your responses were learned, you can begin the work of unlearning them. You can start to question the old messages. Do I really have to be perfect to be loved? Is it truly dangerous to express how I feel? Is it safe now to set a boundary? These questions open the door to healing. They let you move from reaction to reflection, from old survival strategies to conscious choices. In Part 3, we'll explore how to actually rewire the subconscious, how tools like mindfulness, inner child work, therapy, and repetition can help you unlearn the patterns that no longer serve you and begin to live from a place of truth, not trauma. But before we go, I want to remind you, if this journey into your inner world is resonating, if you're starting to recognize patterns that once felt confusing or even shameful, you're not alone, and it helps to walk this path together. So if you haven't already, consider subscribing. This isn't just about psychology. It's about self-liberation, about making peace with where you've been so you can create where you're going. Your past may have shaped your subconscious, but it doesn't have to dictate your future. By now, you've begun to see that many of your emotional patterns, fears, and even the way you talk to yourself didn't start in adulthood. They were quietly woven into you in childhood, through moments you may or may not consciously remember, but your subconscious certainly does. And if you're here, reflecting, connecting the dots, feeling that quiet mix of clarity and grief for what you needed and didn't get, then something powerful is already happening. Because the moment you become aware of the script you've been living by is the same moment you can begin to rewrite it. So, how do we begin to heal? How do we gently reprogram a subconscious mind that's been carrying childhood wounds for years, sometimes decades? The first thing to understand is that healing the subconscious isn't about forcing change or bypassing pain. It's about slowly, compassionately building a relationship with the parts of you that had to adapt to survive. Those protective patterns, like shutting down, people-pleasing, overworking, or numbing out, aren't signs of weakness. They were strategies. Strategies your younger self used to feel safe in a world that didn't always feel safe. One of the most powerful entry points into this healing is something called inner child work. It may sound abstract, but it's deeply rooted in therapeutic practice. Inner child work is about connecting with the younger parts of you, sometimes literally visualizing yourself as a child, and offering them the love, understanding, and validation they didn't receive at the time. When you speak kindly to your inner child, when you say, "You didn't deserve to feel that way," or "It wasn't your fault," you begin to interrupt the self-critical messages that have been on loop for years. You create a new emotional experience, one of safety, empathy, and presence, and the subconscious, which learns best through repetition and emotion, begins to absorb that new truth. Another essential piece of this work is mindfulness. not just as a practice, but as a way of being. Mindfulness is the skill of noticing without judgment, and when it comes to subconscious healing, this means paying attention to your reactions, your inner dialogue, and your triggers, not to shame yourself, but to understand. For example, let's say you feel a sudden wave of panic when someone disagrees with you. Instead of criticizing yourself or pushing it down, pause and ask, where have I felt this before? Often, that panic isn't about the present moment. It's about the past. It might trace back to a childhood where conflict meant danger, silence, or abandonment. By slowing down and observing, you start to loosen the grip of that old pattern. You make space for choice. Another powerful tool is repetition, especially when it comes to creating new beliefs. The subconscious doesn't respond to logic, it responds to what's familiar. So if you've spent most of your life repeating, "I'm not enough," in subtle or overt ways, it's no surprise that self-doubt has become your default. But here's the hope. New beliefs can become familiar too. Through daily affirmations, visualizations, and consistent self-talk, you can begin to plant new subconscious seeds. Not forced positivity, but intentional truths. Things like, I am allowed to take up space. My needs matter. I don't have to earn love. I am worthy of it. When repeated with sincerity and emotion over time, these messages begin to override the old programming. Therapy, especially modalities like EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, IFS, internal family systems, and somatic experiencing, can also be transformative. These approaches are designed to work directly with the subconscious in the body, helping to safely process stored trauma, release emotional blocks, and integrate new, healthier ways of relating to yourself and others. Healing doesn't always happen through insight alone. Sometimes it happens through the body, through the nervous system, through gently bringing stuck energy into motion. And perhaps most importantly, healing happens through relationships. Safe, honest, attuned relationships that model what healthy connection actually looks like. Because no matter how much work you do alone, we are social beings. Much of our wounding happens in relationship, and much of our healing does too. Every time you're heard without judgment, every time someone validates your feelings, every time you're loved, not for what you do, but for who you are, that's a moment that begins to rewrite your subconscious story. But this work takes time. There's no shortcut, no perfect fix. You don't wake up one day and suddenly stop reacting to old wounds. You'll still get triggered. You'll still have moments where the old script kicks in. But little by little, with awareness, compassion, and consistency, those moments become less consuming. You begin to pause before you react. You begin to speak to yourself with more kindness. You begin to feel safer being seen, being honest, being you. And one day, almost quietly, you'll notice a shift. You'll say no without guilt. You'll receive love without fear. You'll walk into a room without shrinking. You'll face discomfort without abandoning yourself. That is the power of subconscious healing. It doesn't just change how you think. It changes how you live, how you love, and how you experience being alive. So, if this journey has stirred something in you, some forgotten memory, some long-held belief, some spark of hope, hold on to it. You are not defined by what happened to you. You are defined by your courage to face it, feel it, and transform it. And if you found value in this series, I invite you to stay connected. Subscribe, join the conversation, and be part of a community of people who are doing the deep, beautiful, sometimes messy work of healing and becoming. Because your subconscious may have been shaped in childhood, but your story is still being written. And now you get to hold the pen. You're not broken. You're becoming. Thank you for walking this path.